Basically, since the council is established by the Faculty of Indian Institute of Science, and to be precise, it's a Professor A.K. Reddy and Professor Satish Dhawan who actually visualized this council, and they actually started this. And since beginning, we were working more on prototype development, product development, and commercializing the product, not for profit making, it's for the benefit of the people. And the kind of activities that we do in the council is many things. One of it is geospatial technology, that is using map for decision making. Fortunately, with the support of the state government, this has been spread across the state. That is, every district has a center on natural resource data management system, what we call it as using GIS and remote sensing to make decisions. And this has been going on for almost 3 decades now. And I think it's wonderful to prize government here, because they believed in these technologies and they're making it part of the institutionalized decision making. That's really good for us. And we also have a portal wherein all these things can be seen through internet. And apart from that, using this GIS and remote sensing, we have we are mapping the monuments, archaeological monuments of the state. I think we have come close to 50% of the mark. And this started with our journey with Hampi site, Hampi UNESCO site, and now using 3D laser technologies, council is moving leaps and bounds in digitizing all the heritage sites across Karnataka. It could be for restoration, rejuvenation, or it could be for 3D visualization as well. And going next, we have the water sector, wherein rainwater harvesting is one of the flagship program, which has made a tremendous impact on the state and also its people. I think right now more than 1.75 lakh houses have been implemented RWH, which roughly translates to about 0.5 TMC, that is 1,000 million cubic feet of water that's been stored. It is one of the strength of the council that is working on a small project and then working on to get a patent. We have quite a few patents on these technologies, which are generally called pop-up filters for rainwater harvesting. And the council also worked on policies and also started with training programs. And now it's, I think, most of the office buildings in the state have been using RWS system. I think it is one area which we are proud to feel that technology has really reached people in the government. Apart from that, there are many other programs in water. That could be watershed development, which we work with the state watershed department. And there are other issues like quality and quantity of water, that's drinking water. Then it could be water body restoration. The work which we did here was showcased and used by the government in many programs. It could be in Narendra program or Jal Shakti program, things like that. And apart from that, education sector is one of the sectors which council is passionately doing starting from 1977-78. This basically, we are grateful to the faculty and scientists of Indian Institute of Science for supporting us in evaluating and mentoring the student project program since almost 45 years now, due to which almost we support more than 1,000 projects each year. And we also award quite a few of them, at least close to 100. And now we started the faculty project programs for those projects who have won the awards. I think we are evaluating right now. I think quite a few of them might get sanctioned. And we'll see that from a student project program, we start to go for a prototype development, then the real product. Then we look for supporting them in venturing into startup and all that. Probably we would like to see that all these things commercialized. Then housing sector, which we are working with Center for Sustainable Technologies, Institute of Science. This actually been a very well developed technology in the sense that more than 20,000 houses have been built using this. And fortunately, right now, technology we don't need to support this because it's already standing on its own strength. And and also quite a few number of architects and engineers who are passionately involved in construction, design, and demonstration and implementation of these technologies. Then we have the renewable energy program. Basically, right now what we are doing is bioenergy. Then other programs also we have in terms of Center of Excellence, Cybersecurity, and also Aerospace and Defense. One interesting project which we did was, I think CST had developed a biodryer earlier, about a decade and so. Now it's been put to use, and we have started a small startup unit, that's a state-funded startup unit, and mostly will be producing fortified food for basically vulnerable students and children, and also adolescents and also women. So this program, I think, is going to start marketing our nutritious or fortified food products probably in coming 3 to 6 months. This is one thing which we are proud of, that is taking shape in a big way. And what is that today's webinar looks like? I think we have eminent women scientist speakers today. Basically, this webinar dwells on building a right kind of ecosystem to attract more women scientists. I think women are there in every field now. I think it's only in the science that we feel that there is less percentage is less compared to other fields. So probably this one area wherein, by listening to the successful women scientists today, probably we'll get an idea about how to become successful being a woman, especially in science. Because I see more women than men in medicine field or engineering field or in IT field. But hopefully we also, through this webinar, I think, dwell on it and sort of bring out a white paper and try to tell the government, both state and central, that this is what we need to do to build a right kind of ecosystem to attract more women scientists. I think that's in the back of our mind. That's why this webinar is so important to us. And this webinar is being live telecast not just by Google Meet, also through YouTube, and it's going to be stored in the servers of DST Government of India. And anybody who wishes to see this also can do that, because it gets stored, I think, not less than for 2 years. So all these things, webinars get stored, and people can watch it anytime they like. That's also one of the things. And the second, the point that we feel that this webinar could dwell on is technologies for women. I think we are trying to do quite a bit of things here, trying to identify issues that plague women and their issues and problems, and make as a areas of interest, prioritize this and give it to student projects or faculty projects and try to bring solutions. So that means to say that how do you emphasize on technologies basically for women-centric issues, women-specific issues. This is one of the areas which I think today's webinar will dwell on. And to tell the speakers and also the participants, we conducted 6 workshops under this auspicious Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav scheme of which is the brainchild and the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, which is culminated in these kind of webinars. The first one we did was STI ecosystem, then human resource development, R&D infrastructure, indigenous technologies, innovation startups, and science communication properly. These are the 6 webinars which we did earlier. Each month we select a theme and do it. And we are bringing out a white paper on each of these themes for all the 30 states, so that each of these themes will have something to dwell on and something to work on, to bring policies, to bring technologies to the mainstream. And now, coming to what KSCST did in association with the Indian Institute of Science, and basically some of these technologies developed by faculty of Indian Institute of Science. One of them is, just to give an example, what could be a women-centric issue and how technology has helped them. There is this Astrovole, what we call it as fuel-efficient wood stoves, which was done in 70s, 80s. Basically, in those days, wood was the major fuel for any stoves. I think that's why it's called Astrovole. Astra means CST was formerly called as Astra. That means say that application of science and technology for rural areas. That's why it's called Astrovole, and it's popularly known as Astrophysics even during that time. This looked into three issues. One is efficiency of the wood stoves used in those days. Second is how do you make the cooking time less by increasing the efficiency of the wood stove. Third is basically the smoke, which used to affect women staying in kitchen for long hours. So what we did was, I think it was something around 15 to 18% of the efficiency of the stoves, and we should remember Professor Locross here. Professor Locross was instrumental in designing this and working on this for more than 3 decades. And these things were had a very high efficient stove, and cooking time was reduced. Because of the high efficiency, we cut down on the usage of wood. The third most important thing is we removed the smoke from the kitchen. These things help women in a big way, especially the carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide content. That is there in the kitchen was almost 100% removed. That is the best part of this technology. That means you identify an issue, then work on it and provide a solution. And to inform you that close to 20 lakh stoves have been built. That is 2 million stoves built around Karnataka under a program called Integrated Rural Energy Program. And apart from that, we had one program which is called as KIRD, that is Karnataka Israel Program for Industrial R&D, wherein industry from India and industry or a knowledge partner from Israel joined together, wherein the government of Karnataka supported it. And they brought out a novel design for treatment of female urinary incontinence. Fortunately, now the clinical trials are going on and 2 medical institutions are involved here. I think one of them is Saptagiri Medical Sciences, that's there in near Chikbanavara. Probably at the end of 6 months, the clinical trials would be over, and we hope to see this product by this year end. Actually, this is the only product which has a this is the only of its kind. It's a novel design. We don't have any similar product, and we are happy that the state government through KSCST supported this, and this project also has come to a stage wherein we can proud that this is an Indian-made product. And apart from that, there are a few things which we took up to benefit women, especially girls also. We established quite a number of schools, especially for girl residential schools, and we had this with the support of Social Welfare Department and also the State Education Department. We started e-learning centers. Basically, e-learning centers provides you with all the digital content from 6th standard to 12th standard that is inclusive in all subjects, and also it's searchable kind of database wherein students can go for any, for example, if you wanted to study physics 8th chapter, just you have to choose 8th standard physics, and it's searchable and it's a beautifully done thing. Front end is really good, so that it's have a good searching facility. And we have the content both from the state and also some of the private institutions also provide us 3D animations for some of the topics or the chapters in physics, chemistry, and mathematics, including biology. Another one, as I told you earlier, we are engaging women SSG in building this startup unit in Yadgir, which I told you, bio dryers, wherein we specifically dry fruits and vegetables to prepare fortified food. And as I told you earlier, I think it will be live by this year. We'd see this product in the market. And one of the important things here recently we did was coordinating Kiran IPR scheme. This Kiran IPR scheme provides on-job training for women in IPR, that is intellectual property rights. We received a huge number of applications, and there are 120 openings, that is 120 internships were opening across India. And KSCST identified IP firms across South India and posted them to these IP firms. And once they get trained, They can be on their own, or they could work in any IP firm as a patent agent or attorney. What this scheme specifically looked into was, I think the scheme will look like this. See, we see a lot of girl and women passing in flying colors in both in SLC, PUC, and degree, and so on and so forth. But after some time, they might opt out of the job because of family compulsions and the family issues. Due to which Government of India thought that how can we bring people who, especially women who have left the profession and want to rejoin. This scheme is meant for them. I think this is the 12th year, and every year we support them. I think, and also we have many schemes in the state government which specifically supports PhD women students. So I think this could also, we could see in our website of KSCST and including our websites. And now S&T for women. Basically, we look at technologies which could be adapted to improve the quality and working conditions of women. That could be one of the strong points for technology-centric organizations like us. I mean, here I could say that technologies are generally gender neutral. So unless if I have to work for technologies for women, then we need to identify the good number of issues which needs technology interventions. That's very much the back of our mind, and probably the coming 3 to 4 months we'll bring out that list and will be shared with you so that we have more technologies in for those issues. And there are many other schemes by the Government of India for women scientists, specifically for those who have left the jobs in between, or those who wants to start and wants to be a scientist. That is women scientist A, that's the research in basic and applied sciences. Then women scientist scheme B, which looks into S&T interventions for social benefit. The third one, which I told you, that's the Kiran IPR scheme for having an internship in IPR for self-employment. And also we have one more program called Gender Advancement for Transforming Institutions. This is called GATI, and I think this is doing quite well, this particular program. Apart from that, we also have a startup supports from the state government. I think women entrepreneurs can get a benefit of this. And thanks for listening, and thanks for joining us today. And I believe that the coming next speakers, they have achieved a lot in their profession and as a scientist, and I think it's wonderful to listen to them. And that's it from my side, and over to Priyanka.
Thank you, sir, for giving a very brief introduction about the importance of the Vigyan Utsav. With this, we start our first talk. So before that, I request all the participants to be on the session throughout the webinar. At the end of the session, the link will be provided so that the certificate will be issued for those only who fills the link. So with this, we have our first speaker, Professor H.S. Savitri Madam. So she is the former professor from Department of Biochemistry, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. She has graduated with PhD from Department of Biochemistry in 1976, and she started her career in the department. She worked on the architecture, genization, and expression of plant viruses, and she is the only woman to be the chair of the department on the occasion of department's centenary. So with many other prestigious awards, recently she has been awarded with the prestigious Karnataka Rajyotsava Award in the year 2021 in the area of science and technology. With this brief introduction, I request Savitri Madam to take over the session. Over to you, Madam. Madam, you can start sharing your screen.
Yes, 1 minute.
Yes, ma'am.
So where is the share button?
Yes, ma'am. There is the present now button.
Present now button.
Next to that, the hand icon.
Hand icon. 1 minute. Let me just see. Where is the hand icon?
In the below, ma'am. In the below, you have that mic symbol, right? to unmute yourself.
1 minute. Yeah. Raise hand is there.
To the next, ma'am. To the next, you have that small rectangle arrow. Yes. If you click that, there will be 3 options: a window, entire screen. You can give a window.
A window is okay. Yeah.
And you can see that your PPT will be somewhere in the window.
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah, you can click on that and share.
Yeah. Are you able to see now?
Yes, ma'am. We can able to see.
Okay. So,
presentation
on a full screen, or I don't know how.
You can go to presentation screen, ma'am.
Where is that?
The below, the next to 263.
Yeah,
Yes.
Now?
No, ma'am.
You're not able to see?
I can, but maybe slide couldn't move. You can do one thing, ma'am. You can close the icon here.
Share, please. Stop sharing.
No, let it share. You stop sharing, ma'am.
Now what do I do? Sorry.
You need to share it again. You need to share it again, ma'am.
I need to share it again.
Ma'am, you share entire screen, ma'am.
Sorry, this is entire screen. But are you able to see?
You have not shared it, ma'am.
Okay, now I will have to go back. I don't know how I can go back. 1 minute.
Escape, ma'am.
Escape. Okay.
Escape will get it.
Now I did. So I go back to the Zoom, and now I press the arrow, present line.
Entire screen.
Entire screen. Click here. Are you able to see?
No, ma'am, you have to share. Yes, ma'am.
You're seeing my screen? Are you able to see?
Yes, ma'am.
1 minute.
Now you go to PPT, ma'am.
Yeah.
Now you give hide.
I think I'll retain like this instead of trying to do something. So good morning, all of you. It's indeed my pleasure to talk in this webinar on women and women scientists. A very warm Women's Day to all those who are here, and many thanks to KSCST for inviting me to give this talk. I just thought that it may be a good idea to just talk about my own experiences of how from a small middle class or lower middle class family, I began the journey into the wonderful world of enzymology and virology, and take you through my journey. Now, I'm sure most successful scientists, whether men or women, have their roots or their success. They owe their success to the mother. And here are my parents. My father was a very small-time businessman working all the time. Mother, a homemaker, but her enthusiasm, her dedication to work and involvement in whatever she does is the one that she has inculcated in all of us. We were 4 girls and 1 boy, my brother, eldest brother. And to my luck, both of these people were so good that they decided. And in fact, my father was the eldest son in their family of 8. And he had to bring up all his younger siblings as well. And so worked very hard to at least make the ends meet, and many times always in loans. But one thing that was clear to them was that education is the key to come out of poverty. And my mother, her sole aim in life was to see that all of us get educated and are able to earn our own living, mainly because she found that at that time there was so much hard press for money that if only she also earned, maybe the family could have moved forward better. But she didn't. Nonetheless, she was all the time busy, not only in cooking and feeding us, but doing so many activities. She was an excellent person who could do 3, 4 multitasking all the time and made sure she sat with us whenever we were studying. So although she didn't know anything, she would be with us. That itself was a great strength of encouragement and for us to do very well. So these are the 5 of us. 2 of them were medical doctors, are medical doctors, gynecologists, and my brother was a PhD in business administration. My younger sister was a PhD. Is a PhD in statistics and worked for in the United States for Food and Drug Administration (FDA) for many years. She was also in the US. Both me and my second immediate sister are in Bangalore. So just imagine that parents who are so hard pressed and all, simple that complete one-minded approach to see that they will make sure all of us get educated, and was a very strong source of encouragement. And like my mother and my father who work very hard, all of us are workaholics, if you might call, and at the same time not losing the sight of what needs to be done for the present. So after my, in fact, my mother was responsible for my getting into the chemistry stream in BSc Honors. Although she didn't know much English, she came with me when I had to join there and told the principal that one day, if you give her if she gets into this stream, she will be a great scientist. And I'm very proud that indeed I was able to fulfill her ambition. And after completing the master's degree in Central College in chemistry, I joined Indian Institute of Science to do my PhD. And here again, one of the most important turning points in my life was to have Professor Appaji Rao as my research supervisor. He's not only a great human being, a great dedicated entomologist, and he has inculcated, just like what I imbibed the strength from my mother, he is my guru, and he has given me the methods and how to deal with people, interpersonal relationship, and how to be productive, and how not to waste time in ways that will not lead us to fruitful results. So this was my third. And another person was my own husband, Professor Murthy. He was doing his PhD in organic chemistry. And again, in those days, we had to work with very minimal. We didn't have the computers and all. So we got married when I had just finished the experimental part of the work. He gave me the full strength and also helped me to complete the work, go to this typist. I was carrying my first son, at that time, and I had to walk up and down that typist and all that. And nothing comes easy. That's all what I want to say. If you want to be successful, if you want to achieve something, one thing is working hard and to be able to sacrifice. If you want to be going around doing so many different things for enjoyment, you can't achieve. One-minded approach to is extremely important, and keeping what is called as intuition in experimental work. You need that intuition. When you do experiments, sometimes they fail, but if you are able to recognize what could have gone wrong, correct the mistake and go forward, those are the very important things. When I started the work in Professor Appaji Rao's lab, I started working on this enzyme called aspartate transcarbamylase. This is the first enzyme in the pathway of pyrimidine biosynthesis. You know, pyrimidines are the building blocks for the synthesis of DNA, and hence they are extreme. This enzyme, this in fact was the very first enzyme where it was shown that the end product, that is, you start from aspartate and carbamyl phosphate, and you make carbamyl aspartate, and through a series of steps, you will generate what is the first product, uridine monophosphate, and this product, uridine monophosphate, inhibits this first enzyme. This is called feedback inhibition, that is aspartate transcarbamylase. So thereby, whenever there is a requirement of DNA, a requirement for DNA synthesis, the enzyme gets activated, and when you have enough and you have to turn off, this end product of the pathway inhibits the reaction. So it was a very fascinating period for me to learn about these regulatory enzymes, their methods. In fact, we had to start from establishing a reaction path, a method for assaying the enzyme, and I had the beginner's luck that I was able to establish a very consistent assay method, that is to measure the product of this reaction, and later on learn many methods of purification and then kinetic methods. That in fact, one of the interesting aspects of this enzyme was that the end product UMP feedback inhibited the enzyme, whereas in the animal system, it was the CTP which was inhibiting the reaction. Anyway, we had a lot of interesting observations to share, and I learned the methods of science, methods of research during this very important period. Then at the time when I was ready to submit my thesis, I submitted my thesis on December 9th, and my son was born on December 20th. So that was so close. You see, I had to work to make sure that I complete this task of finishing the work before my son. And within 2 months or 3 months of my son was born, I was back in the department as a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Biochemistry, IISc, and in about a year, Professor Murthy also finished his degree, and we both left for research in Purdue University. Here, it was one of the cold seasons in 1977. We had gone there in November. So Professor Michael Rossman, with whom Professor Murthy had got the postdoctoral position, had invited us to his house, and I had gone there as a dependent, mainly because I knew that the biochemistry was a flourishing field at that time. So, I could get the PDF position, but Murthy wanted to shift from crystallography to macromolecular crystallography. So one of the stalwarts in macromolecular crystallography was Michael Rossman, and fortunately he had the position. So I followed him as a dependent. Then when we went to his house, he said, "Oh, you have a child." My son was just 11 months old, and "Oh, maybe you should take courses." I didn't even understand what he meant. He thought that I can only do part-time work and only maybe take some extra courses to improve myself like that. I felt so disappointed because we had come all the way from Bangalore taking loan, and here I was told that you can't get a job. Then fortunately for me, there was this Professor Albert Light in the Department of Biochemistry who took me as postdoctoral position, and in this 5 years I learned many other methods of protein chemistry, and also in those days the method HPLC methods for the purification of peptides was the very being innovated, and so I got the opportunity to learn all this, and by that time we were ready to come back. We had the idea that we should start something big when we returned. And so Professor Michael Rossman had just then determined the structure of a plant virus called Sasvenya mosaic virus. And so I decided to resign my job with Albert Light and join Michael Rossman to do some biochemical work, so that when we come back together, the main idea was that we should have a good project and a very well-established project before we return to India. So I went to his lab and worked on the assembly of Sasvenya, southern bean mosaic virus. I'll talk about what assembly means in my later part of my talk with one of the postdocs, John Erickson. But Michael Rossman was rather very generous in some ways. He let us publish the work on the assembly of Sasvenya mosaic virus in virology all by ourselves in about 3 months or 4 months time. I could generate all the data required for a paper in virology. And then when that came out, Michael came back and told me, Savitri, I should have hired you in the beginning itself. So I thought that was a great compliment, that here was a person who thought maybe with a child I can't work. And when I went back and did the assembly work, he said, oh, I made a mistake. So he was great enough to accept his shortcomings and tell me that, yes, you are good. Then in 1981, we decided to come back. And fortunately for us, since we thought we will do some work on viruses, we started looking in the literature on what viruses can we work when we go back. And just to tell you, the plant viruses are no different, are different in some sense, but they have a lot of similarities with animal viruses. The main difference being that plant viruses infect plants because of the cell wall barrier. They are not receptor mediated, but go through an injury on the cell wall, and once they enter, they establish themselves and multiply. And another aspect is several of the plant viruses have what we call as divided genomes. 3 or 4 pieces of the genome are encapsulated, and each of these, simultaneously, all the 4 enter the plant and then cause infection. And these are by no means less important, because they cause severe economic losses, particularly in many of the commercially important crops. So when we looked in the literature at that time, much of the work in the country was focused on epidemiology, and on how to control the disease in the field. So agricultural universities were mainly trying to control the virus rather than finding what virus is causing which disease. And in the beginning, the main method by which one would detect which virus is infecting which plant was by use of what is called as antibody-based techniques, ELISA. And in fact, every country has their own species and their own set of viruses, and therefore you have to generate antibodies to the viruses that are existing within the country, and there weren't many people who had good set of antibodies. So fortunately for me, I was strong in biochemistry, and this area was untouched. So I could immediately jump into working on some of the viruses that are very common in our country. So initially, of course, we began with a virus which was from the United States, mainly because we knew how to purify this, and it was we could get it in good yield. To make any structural work or biochemical work, you need pure virus in good quantities. So here we were able to establish a very good purification method and also crystallize the virus. They say well begun is half done. For me, Professor Apache Rao was so generous. Even before I had my faculty position, in fact, I was working as CSIR pool officer and UGC research scientist, etc., for almost 7 years before I got my faculty position. Many times, when husband and wife work in the same place, it usually goes by saying that many of the work we did, also Professor Murthy was an author, or Appaji Rao would be an author. So since Murthy had a faculty position, my work used to be kind of sidelined and kind of given the credit, saying that part of the work, the credit goes to Murthy or to Appaji Rao, and most often I had to fight my way through such prejudices, such thinking, and establish and show that indeed I have an existence of my own. And in that direction, these two students who were giant students with Professor Appaji Rao but worked with me, they made what we call as the well begun is half done. Surya Narayana determined the complete primary structure of the code protein of this virus, and this was the very first primary structure that was, and all by manual methods, that was published from our country. And Sukanya established that one of the plant enzymes, serine hydroxymethyl transferase, uses a different mechanism. It is a pyrovyl enzyme for carrying out the reaction. So both of them did excellent work in my lab, and that established that I could do and work harder. Meanwhile, when you have taken such a challenging problem, which was not done before anywhere in the country, you have to be working most of the time. And as I told you, I had my son, and after I came back, I also gave birth to a daughter. And here are the two little kids. And both of them were being taken care of by my parents-in-law. I have to say that particularly my mother-in-law, all my success after marriage has come because of their complete dedication to my family, and they never went out anywhere and took care of my children and all the cooking and everything, so I could spend time peacefully. And I also had this habit of working in this. While I'm in the lab, I am a scientist, I work very hard, and came back home, made sure that I don't bring back whatever that I did there, but worked with my children and family for the rest of the time. Now, another turning point in my life was my invitation by Professor M.M. Johri. He was from TIFR Mumbai. He had organized the Indo-French meeting in Strasbourg, and that was for finding some collaborative work and getting some funding through the Indo-French grants. And I had the good fortune to be associated with one of the best scientists, Annelies Henny, and we then wrote a collaborative project because she was working on viruses similar to what I had started on. And the one thing that was very nice with her was I could work with her as an equal and never as a subordinate. And she gave me the complete freedom, and I made several short visits in the program and was able to establish. And this gave me an opportunity. For example, in those days, even genome sequencing, we didn't have automated methods. We had to do manual methods of genome sequencing. And what we were working was an RNA virus. So you had to first convert the RNA genome into a cDNA, clone them, and then sequence them by manual methods. I went through these short visits, I was able to bring back the methodologies for sequencing and get the and also start on the structure and function of viral encoded protein. This was the first genome that we completely sequenced in Bangalore, and we were able to decipher the various proteins that it codes for. And the advantage of such cDNA cloning is that you can express each of these proteins in a heterologous system, and study them. And also we had good collaboration with Lakshmi Sita, and we were able to generate some plants that were resistant to this virus as well. I worked on many of these proteins, but I just don't want to talk about them in greater detail. Now, our aim in the beginning was to be able to solve the structure of the virus, and indeed it took almost 10 or 12 years for us to get to this stage of determining the structure. And what this shows is that this is a RNA virus. This is how the capsid looks. Inside is a 6 kilobase basis RNA whose genome sequence we had just showed you. And this is covered, the genome is covered by a shell of 180 identical subunits. Each of them is 20 kilodalton. So although you look at them, there are the green ones which form the pentamers, the blue and the magenta ones form the hexamers. There are 12 pentamers and 20 hexamers. All of them go to make the shell. So 180 subunits go and assemble themselves into form a shell inside which the genome sits and it is protected. Now the finer detail of this structure showed us in the hexameric region, we have a hand clasp type of arrangement. The N-terminal part of one subunit is interacting with the neighboring subunit like this. So one of the things we wanted to ask was, how do these identical subunits arrange themselves such that they finally become a shell of 180 subunits? So we thought maybe this is a very important part of the viral coat protein that decides how the subunits need to assemble. Now, because we had the molecular biology tools already set in place, we could address the role of these different regions in viral assembly, by generating chimera or coat protein mutants through which we could get some detail about the assembly. Now, this is another virus, Sasvenya mosaic virus, whose structure was solved again in collaboration with Professor Murthy and his group. And this also has pentamers and hexamers, and you can see the architecture of this virus is different from the physalis mottle virus that I just showed. And in this case, the N-terminal 70 residues are disordered, and in the hexameric region, there is what we call as a beta amylase. So amino-terminal arm is rich in basic residues, and so there is a possibility that this part interacts with the genome and then holds it inside, and this part helps in forming the shell, and then there is a calcium metal ion that holds it tight. But how do we address these? What is the role of these different parts of the capsid protein in the assembly into particle of 180 subunits? So what we did was to express the capsid protein in a heterologous system, and then ask the question whether the mutated protein assembles into full particles or whether the assemblies are arrested at specific stages, and what is the role of different regions or metal ion. Now, the point I want to make is, in fact, it is not possible for a 6 kb genome to be encapsulated by not more than 1 or 2 subunits, because the genome has very limited capacity for expression, and therefore the capsid protein that is expressed will have to have some kind of symmetry in it, such that the same repeating unit can form the shell. So whenever we express the protein, for example, the intact protein without any mutation, the normal capsid protein, it makes full capsids because it has the inherent assembly, inherent capacity to form such shells. So there is no accumulation of assembly intermediates if we express the intact protein. So now you express mutant proteins, then you may be able to arrest and find out how it is going on. So,
excuse me, madam. Madam, is that okay to conclude in another 3 minutes, ma'am?
Next, how many minutes?
3 to 5 minutes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, I will. So here you see the N-terminal arm when it is removed and expressed, you make particles which are much smaller. See, this is 60 subunits, this is 180 subunits. Like that, we have done a large number of experiments to tell us that we start with a dimer, then we make a 10-mer, then RNA enters, and then the metal ion comes and how it. So the detail of what is the role of the amino terminal, arginine-rich motif, if you remove this, the RNA cannot interact, and therefore it makes only small particles which do not have the RNA. So like that, details of assembly we were able to assemble. What is the use? What we have done with this now is to express a foreign peptide. For example, this is what we call as the B domain of a protein called Staphylococcus protein A, and this has ability to recognize antibodies. So here we have the capsid protein expressing a foreign protein, and now this chimeric protein can bind to antibodies. Now the viruses have a natural ability to enter cells. Now because of that ability to enter cell, we can get the antibody inside cells. In fact, most of the antibody-based therapies, cancer therapies or whatever, are based on antibodies that are against surface proteins, because antibodies by themselves do not have the ability to enter cells. Now here we have a nanoparticle which can carry the antibodies inside cells. So this is going from basic fundamental research to be able to establish this. Now another very interesting work we did was one of these proteins called VPG. This binds to the 5' end of the genome and protects it, and also it acts as a primer for its multiplication. Now, what is the characteristic? This protein does not have many hydrophobic residues. It has only charged residues. So it is kind of flappy and cannot fold. So what we have done in this part of our research is to establish the role of this unfolded protein in this bringing out the activity or changing the activity of other proteins. For example, this is a viral protease. This has the typical trypsin active site, but it is inactive, and it has a surface exposed aromatic residues. And this VPG, because it's flappy, can now interact in such a way that it renders the protease active. Similarly, this VPG can interact with several host proteins and alter the chemistry of the cell. So this is another very interesting aspect of a DNA virus, which I collaborated. As I say, I just want to bring home the point that you can only do good work if you have the ability to interact with several other scientists. And here is Dr. Lakshmi Sita, an expert in tissue culture, with whom I could interact and generate this transgenic cotton. Now, this is the structure of another enzyme, diaminopropionate aminolyase, a PLP enzyme, which took a long time, but based on the structure, Kalyani and Shweta from Murthy's lab could design many mutants and come up with a mechanism by which this reaction occurs. Now, one other work which we have done, again, just to give a flavor, is to ask, in Karnataka, many of the marriages are among relatives, and does it have any effect on the children that are born to them? So this again was an effective collaboration with one Professor Alan Bittles and Appaji Rao and Radha Ramadevi, the pediatrician, and the statistician Rajeshwari. Now, all along this kind of very intense work, I had the pleasure of bringing up two wonderful children. My daughter Rashmi S. Murthy is a pediatrician, and my son is a professor in the Indian Institute of Science. And now we are happy with through 3 grandchildren, 3 girls, all of them girls. And I'm indeed very, very fortunate to have them and enjoy their company now that I'm enjoying my retired life. This, I would like to thank the Indian Institute of Science, Department of Biochemistry, and all those who collaborated with me and my students, who are the major backbone for all the research that I conducted in my career. So again, a take-home message for all those who are aspiring to become scientists or technologists is that nothing comes easy. You have to work very hard and sacrifice. Be ready to sacrifice many things for the sake of your what you want to achieve. Whatever field you take, you should be completely involved and have that passion. Then there is no way you can fail in success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving a very inspirational journey which enriches our young minds to take up being a woman scientist. So thank you, ma'am, on behalf of KSCST. I thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you, ma'am. So
Yes. Can I stop sharing now?
Yes, ma'am, you can stop sharing, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So,
Yeah.
dear participants, we have our next speaker. Next speaker is Professor Pratima Murthy, Director, NIMANS, Bengaluru. Pratima Murthy has 30 years of extensive experience and exceptional accomplishment in the field of mental health. She is a well-recognized leader in addiction psychiatry. She has been instrumental in the successful development of the state-of-art Center for Addiction Medicine at NIMANS. She has served as a consultant to prominent international agencies such as United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, International Labour Organization, World Health Organization. She has also served as a resource person for various flagship training programs in substance abuse prevention and tobacco sanction in the country and across the globe. Pratima Murthy is also recognized for her contribution in improving care of persons with mental illness through her work with the National Human Rights Commission on quality assurance in mental health care both in institutional and in the community level. In recognition for her research and academic excellence, Dr. Pratima Murthy has received numerous awards and honors, including the prestigious Dr. Raja Ramanna State Award by Government of Karnataka and Lifetime Achievement Award from Rotary. Recently, she has honored with the WHO World Health Organization Regional Director Special Recognition Award on World No Tobacco Day 2021. She has more than 300 research publications in various international index journals and scientific books. With this brief introduction, I request Pratima Murthy Madam to take over the session. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. A very good morning to everyone who's listening today. And on the occasion of the International Women's Day, wish you all very well. I know in the audience are possibly a lot of young, aspiring scientists, both men and women, as well as very seasoned scientists. So I'm going to try and pitch this talk to the young aspirants and really discuss with you a few issues that might be relevant for flourishing in science. I, of course, work in the area of health services and have been as a medical doctor. One of my principal interests has always been the care of patients. But subsequently, I think I've also done, all my research has focused on how there can be at least quickly a transfer of whatever has been done at the bench to the bedside and to the community. I'm not going to use any slides. I just thought I would make this more personal and perhaps, allow a little time for any questions or any comments that anyone else would like to make. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity today in what science offers to women. We know that there have been leaders in science, as there have been leaders in a variety of other areas of life, whether it is in holding positions of leadership in terms of governance, in terms of in terms of heading institutions, in terms of being ahead of our times, whether it's in medicine, science, and so on. But I think it's also important to understand that these are numbers which can be counted on one's fingers. So in terms of equal representation in all the areas, it's certainly very, very, there's a huge challenge in terms of being able to narrow that gender divide when you talk about representation. And if you saw this morning, for example, of women in STEM, you'll see that the representation of women is quite, inadequate. And therefore, we need to look at this very, very closely. Now, what drives women to entire science? The first, of course, is a desire, is an interest in the particular area to try and, address one's interest in the area. The second and most important thing is opportunity. And opportunities, fortunately, in the last decade or so, there are several opportunities that have opened up to encourage women and really to look at how you can balance both. So I'm going to focus the rest of my talk on a Niti Aayog presentation, which looked at women in science. This is about 4 or 5 years ago that the report came up, and it talked about certain key elements, which I thought I should discuss in the scope of this talk, to really highlight what it is that women in science look for. One important area is the quality of academic infrastructure and support services. The second is the non-academic support systems that are available in institutions. The third is the policy and the programmatic framework that exists in institutions. The other flexibility, issues of time commitment become also important areas. And academic independence, as well as research funding and collaborations, are also critically important. The Niti Aayog looked at the best practices that are possible, in terms of helping women to flourish in science. First, they said, is the design of strategies based on data collected. And therefore, they interviewed more than 900 women in science, and they came up with the aggregated view of how women could be encouraged to develop professional excellence, research productivity, academic performance as well, and more importantly, how they could balance their dual roles in terms of their academic aspirations as well as their family commitments. And therefore, they looked at broad categories in terms of the ones that I mentioned earlier. It appears that a study environment, time commitment, and peer group interaction emerged as a significant group of factors in facilitating this dual role and balancing of academia as well as family commitments. The second was encouragement for continuation of higher studies and academic attainment. Large academic institutions can provide academic resources and support services. These are critical for ensuring professional and academic excellence as well as research productivity. And they're also very important for the retention of women in science and facilitating this role. In terms of the availability of non-academic infrastructure, this obviously is very important in terms of, of some degree of reforms in the regulatory framework and the management practices in institutions. And these best practices include helping women balance service continuity, allowing flexibility in employment, and means of promoting entry and retention of women in science. So one of the things that in which women's entry into science and retention in science can be strengthened, continued, and spread across the country would include an increase in the number of postdoctoral fellowships, with ensuring regularity and availability of these so that they can transition from doctoral to postdoctoral research. Perhaps the transferability of such fellowships, for the women, special incentives like awards, both monetary and non-monetary, linked with completion and successful completion of projects have been suggested as by the women as possible incentives. Interventions geared to popularizing areas of science like engineering and physical sciences and chemistry, right at the school level, both in urban and rural areas, was suggested as a way of changing mindsets and getting more young women interested in these areas, and how both students and parents perhaps at that stage need to be enthused in encouraging their wards to develop these areas. So, and I think a lot of institutions are doing this to encourage Science Day, to encourage, visits to educational institutions at a very young age, having competitions for schools to make sure that there is a change in mindset and people are drawn to science, similar to what is done in other areas of social sciences and management programs. I think we have to learn from these to make sure that we encourage early entry into science. And this early entry, this desire to, to develop and grow in the area, and then the opportunities together will help to strengthen the whole area. It also suggests that women science professionals who are already established should visit research institutions, universities, and colleges and inspire younger women students and scholars to take up this program. So despite my schedule, I make it a point to try and talk at these fora so that we can actually tell people that it is possible. The earlier speaker spoke about the kind of support that she had to pursue the wonderful work that she was doing. And it is for all of us, not just to aspire, but also to create the social networks which support us, and for organizations also to create an environment of learning and encouragement so that, we can come up in these areas. Flexibility in the service continuity norms has been something that has been shown up as being desirable, because career breaks, which are sometimes very necessary because of the dual commitments, can reflect at this point in time, can be a challenge for women in terms of pursuing their aspirations for promotions and so on. And that is something that needs to be very carefully factored in terms of selection, as well as in terms of the contractual nature of various employments. Of course, the current relaxation eligibility criteria in terms of age limits, it has been suggested in this particular report that it may be replaced with eligibility assessments in terms of experience or other performance indicators. Policy support in terms of popularizing research support services to better absorb women who've had career breaks and are planning re-entry into career. So this kind of break in career and how women can be facilitated to re-enter has been seen. And you'll notice that it's not only in the science sector, but even in the management sector, that many women have to take breaks because of this dual commitment. And therefore, anything that facilitates a retention and re-entry is something that needs to be looked at. Now, when you look at non-academic infrastructure, what are we referring to? This might be housing, transportation, family care, which is a very, very critical component, especially young women who have young children, and who do not have the family support at home. This may be a very important thing. And of course, healthcare-related support services, which address both their health, safety, and security needs, can also be very, very important factors in supporting women in science. Finally, think flexibility in terms of work from home and other facilities, a good work environment, a good peer relationship, a good professional, development across all categories and ranks within an organization may help to improve and retain women in science. I'm just going to end this very short presentation with some of my own personal journey. And I've always felt that it's very, very important to have aspirations. And I think to dream and to dream big is something that is very necessary. But these dreams also need to be tailored with being willing to shoulder the additional responsibilities, because dual commitments means that you have to give more time if you want to be able to balance these substantially, and there are only X number of hours in a day. So somewhere along the line, dual commitments not only require a greater responsibility, but also require prioritization of what is very important to one at what stage of one's career. As I mentioned, networking and engaging social supports is another very important thing for women. The other thing is to actually look for opportunities, because very often we are not really aware of all the opportunities, all the incentives, all the projects that are available. So I think it would be good for institutions to have a window where they specifically talk about, or they specifically publicize these kind of gender incentivized programs, whether it's for fellowships, whether it's for projects and so on, so that more women actually become aware of this and apply for such programs. Of course, we understand that while there are a lot of these opportunities that are provided to women, there are also other gender inequities which prevail in society. And you cannot expect women in science to be on top of their field if these kind of gender inequities that are there in our homes, in society in general, also do not change. So as a society, we also have a responsibility to address some of these inequities so that when we come in to academia, we are not in any disadvantaged position. And I think if those kind of changes occur in society, which will occur very, very slowly, but eventually I'm very hopeful that they will occur over time, then there is a more leveling play field, and that will make many more women who are otherwise disadvantaged play a crucial role. And I believe that engaging more women gives a wholly different spectrum into the development, not just of science, but of various other things like policy, infrastructure, and so on. And when we have an equal role in the census, in our rights to vote and be equal citizens, I think it is also important to see equal representation even in the field of science. I'm very hopeful that in the decades to come, we will see more and more people, not just in positions of leadership, but participating. And I want to end by saying it was indeed a proud moment for me a couple of years ago when I was the head of the Department of Psychiatry, that earlier we used to get about 80 young men, male doctors joining the MD program. And for the first time a couple of years ago, we had a 50-50 representation of women seeking to specialize in psychiatry. And that is really a welcome step. And I hope that in all branches of science, including medicine, we will see women flourish, not just at the entry level, but in advanced positions. Thank you very much for having me. Over to you, Priyanka.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for giving a wings to dream more and more in a field of science. So thank you, ma'am. It was very pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you, ma'am. Dear participants, we have our next speaker. Next speaker is Dr. Rupa Yami from Isro. So she has worked as operational manager for Chandrayaan-2. And presently, she is serving as a Deputy General Manager, Spacecraft Operational Area, and she is also working as a Deputy Project Director for Chandrayaan-3 mission with many other projects handled in Isro. So with this, I request Rupa Madam to take over this session.
Good morning. You are able to see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. We can able to see your screen.
Okay. 1 second. Good morning to all. Now we have heard many women achievers in different field. First of all, my hearty congratulations to all women employees or all the women for Happy Women's Day. I'll just talk about the women achievers in space science, how in Isro the women have achieved and come up all these years of 50 years of Isro career. Just before talking about directly into the woman achievement, I just want to tell Isro has started near 50 years back with Dr. Vikram Sarabhai vision. It is mainly for after independence, he thought to India to developments, it should be through science and technology. So science and technology, how to use for the farmers. More than 6,000 farmers he wanted to address at a time to give very good programs for the farmers. So he thought TV is the best option. We can install every village TV so that we can transmit a very good program for the farmers. But for the TV, again, yes, we need a satellite. So instead of hiring a channel from other country, why can't we have satellite technology and rocket technology? With that vision, it is mainly for the common man, to support a common man. The Isro has come up. So it has started in Tuba near Trivandrum, Kerala state, 50 years back, and now it has spread across the country. More than 22 centers has come all over the country. It is the program is mainly both satellite and rocket. So we have started with sounding rockets, then small rockets like RLV, then ASLV, PSLV. Now, people used to call big Bahubali, the GSLV. Mark 3 is there. Now RLV, reusable launch vehicle testing is also going on for for human space mission. Again, space flight is required. So that is the improvement is happening in the launch vehicle. Similarly, in the satellite side, we have a different types of satellite for the different applications. We have a remote sensing, communication satellite, scientific satellite like AstroSat for astronomical applications. Interplanetary satellites we have like Mangalyaan, Chandrayaan, and so on. And the small satellites, navigation satellites, the Navic receiver, what now you people are hearing, it is coming in all the mobiles now. So those satellites and student satellites, like the different satellite is having a different applications. So this is how the Isro is developing. So the woman contribution. The woman contribution, okay, now people have gone up to a director level. Yes, it has taken some time because initially woman entry to Isro was it was really a late entry, but yes, whatever the contribution the women are doing, it is really a remarkable. So I have just taken the example of mom spacecraft. So one example I'll just tell. Our mom satellite tracking, one video is coming here. You can see, not video, it is animation. The sun is there around that blue lines, or where Earth is rotating around the sun, and this green or the mom mission, the first how we have increased our velocity. The next round is the Mars planet, and see, when Mars is also moving, Earth is also moving. Along with that, this mom has taken nearly 300 days from Earth to reach the Mars planet. There we have captured the Mars. This is then it started rotating. Actually, it is designed for 6 months. Now it is completed 7 years, and it is 8th year. It is going very nicely. So this contribution, see this trajectory from the earth, when it has to launch and what is the path it has to taken, and to increase the velocity, what we have to do it. These are all a pure calculation. It is a flight dynamics very critical calculation is what I can tell you, or very critical design. This design headed by a lady, the complete planning when it has to launch, that I'll show you. See here, you can see satellite when it was launching, the Earth was here. That was in 2013 November. So it has taken nearly 25 days to depart from Earth. So at departure time, we should know where the Earth position and where the Mars position. Then what is the trajectory? To come this trajectory takes nearly 300 days. In that 300 days, where will be the Mars planet? So how to capture it? The time it has come at this position, our mom satellite also should travel here. Again, we have to fire precisely, very precisely, burning nearly 250 kg of fuel. Then we have to capture this. See, this is this calculation. This is a flight dynamics activity headed by our woman employee. This is before going to other subsystem things. I'll just give one 2 minutes video. This you just see. Then I'll tell you each position how the woman
mission will be launched by the extended version of the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, known as the PSLV-XL, from Sriharikota, the spaceport of India. The rocket will lift off from the ground using its first stage solid rocket motor and the strap-on boosters. As it travels through the atmosphere, the first stage and the strap-ons will burn out and separate from the vehicle, and the second stage liquid engine takes over. When the rocket comes out of the atmosphere, the heat shield, which protects the satellite from the atmosphere, will open out and drop down. Subsequently, the second stage will burn out and hand over the flight to the third stage solid rocket motor. The third stage will again jettison from the rocket after completing its thrust phase. During the first 3 stages of the flight, ISTRAC downrange stations located at Bangalore, Sriharikota, Port Blair, Brunei, and Bayak will track the vehicle and continuously deliver the vehicle telemetry to the control center. The rocket then enters a long coast phase of unpowered ballistic trajectory for a duration of about 26 minutes. When the vehicle sets out of sight of the Bayak ground station, there will be a gap of around 10 minutes where it will not be visible to any ground station. Subsequently, it will be spotted and tracked by 2 shipborne terminals located in the Western Pacific Ocean, where the major vehicle events will be monitored. The first ship is located at such a position where it can monitor the ignition of the 4th stage liquid rocket engine. Similarly, the location of the second ship is chosen so as to monitor the burnout of the 4th stage and satellite separation.
Yeah. See, this video you have seen, and you have seen all the trajectories. That station, keeping antenna across the globe is very much important. It is very critical thing for us to get the data, because what will happen when a satellite is separating from the launch vehicle, that instant data is very crucial and very important, because when satellite is separating from the vehicle, which direction, what velocity it is separated, information is required for further other antennas to track. But in the MOM mission, what happened? The satellite separation was over Atlantic Ocean. So we could not keep any antenna. There was no land. So we have kept two shipborne terminals in the near Fiji Island, and it is called Nalanda and Yamuna, and we have kept. So this is a complete ISTRAC activity, and Lucknow launching at Sriharikota. Then it has to some next tracking is over Port Blair. So we had to keep a manpower in Port Blair, then Brunei, and Biak is in Indonesia. So and when it is coming back, we have antenna in Mauritius. These are all our Indian stations in across the world, where during the launch and in the normal phase it has to support. So the women are deputed across the world, all the ground station, and they'll stay for months together or years together, and 24/7 they are working and supporting for the mission support. This is how actually the trajectory is happening from Sriharikota, and this is the where two shipborne terminals we are kept. Then it goes like that. See, it is not only the ground station or the flight dynamics, especially for the MOM mission. The mission operation, mainly the mission operation, operational director were two ladies. I think the MOM has given so much media coverage. You people could have seen how many how the mission analysis operational directors has handled the whole MOM mission. That is by a lady. The mission analysis team, the mission is headed by a lady Isro employee. Then communication. See, other communication to MOM communication design, there is a lot of change, because other satellite, whatever it is rotating around the earth, the capacity is a low gain antennas. But when you are communicating for 400 million kilometer, where MOM is rotating around the Mars, communicating requires a very high gain antenna. That design, first time Isro is doing that mission. So that communication design headed by lady. Then the solar panel of the MOM mission, that solar panel also, the design should be different, because whatever the sun intensity for the earth bound satellite to sun intensity in the Mars bound satellite is totally different. So for that sun intensity, the very low intensity sun will be falling on the solar panel. For that sufficient power has to be generated. So it is a totally different design. The solar panel design was different. That team also is led by a lady, is what I proudly want to say. Again, the flight dynamics, as I already told, and the sensor systems. See, the control system requires some input from the sensor to maintain the satellite in the 3-axis stabilized condition. So for that, we need a sensor to sense where the satellite, which orientation it is in, whatever the desired orientation it is there or not. We have a different types of sensors, star sensor, inertial sensor, sun sensor, like that. If it is an earthbound satellite, yes, of course, we have an earth sensor. So that sensor design also headed by woman. See, that is how the MOM woman contribution for the MOM mission, that is MOM is Mars orbiter mission, other way we'll call it as a Mangalyaan. And it is really a great success, what I can tell, because Actually, mom was designed for 6 months. After going to Mars planet, after capturing the Mars orbit, it has to work for 6 months is the prediction. But the control was such a fine control. See, we will keep some fuel. The fuel for if any contingency, we need some extra fuel. Around 30 kg of fuel we have kept extra for any type of contingency in on orbit. Because of high solar flare or any other space activities. But the control 24/7 control was such a fine control that is 36 kg of fuel was left. So that has come for 8 years. With the 8 years, whatever the science data we got, it was really very good information we got about the Mars planet. Not only the Mars mission, you know, if you can come to other satellite projects, our geosat project director Anuradha, TK Anuradha, she was headed by a geosat. She is the first lady to become a project director for the communication satellite, geosatellite, and afterwards she has become a SATCOM director. Then space science director Dr. Sita is also handled for a few years nicely. Presently, Gaganyaan, that is a human mission, human space mission, Gaganyaan director is a lady. And presently, our DSRQ is division, the director of DSRQ, that is a quality division, is also headed by a lady. Small satellite project director is a lady. Like this, whatever we are telling, the SPL director, SPL is planetary science. One division is there in the Trivandrum. Then our ISTRAC, where I'm working, the associate director of that, and Chandrayaan-2 project. Really, here the project director, the mission director, and the operational director is a lady. Employees is I can proudly tell it was really very good. The orbiter is till now also orbiter is working very fine, and it has completed almost 95% of the moon. It has covered collecting all the science information. Okay, lander and rover we could not succeed in the last minute, and now Chandrayaan-3 project is coming up. Then deputy project directors and project directors of the different divisions as led by. And not only that, our Isro antenna is there in Antarctica. 2 antennas we have established. That expedition team also led by lady, and 156 years age lady. She was there for more than a year, completely maintaining the Antarctica station. And now presently, last month, one lady went. She is a very young, hardly she is 20-25 years girl. Now she is in Antarctica. Controlling and supporting all our Isro satellites. This is how. So what I can tell is Isro is one place where there is no discrimination. It is only depending on your eligibility in the sense your capability. Capability. If you are capable, definitely you can come up to the level. These are all the people where I was just telling. All leading in the either in the MOM mission or the Chandrayaan mission or other divisions. Now human space project also as led by a lady. Now whatever one robot we have made for upcoming HSP Vyomitre we are planning. Then other one is nearly 13 years back, 2007, we had a space recovery capsule. The first time the satellite has launched, and within 13 days we could recover the satellite back. That is the first time the re-entry technology we have successfully experimented. Re-entry is really very critical, I want to say, because when it is coming from space to Earth, when it is entering the Earth environment, because of friction, the very temperature will increase in the more than 2500 degrees centigrade. The enormous heat will generate. With that, if it is satellite capsule is not properly, thermally not properly designed, then immediately there will be a disaster. But the entry point, the thermal design of the recapsule, and the trajectory of the re-entry, and where it should splash on the water and how to recover, it is really a challenging task. We have done successfully this mission in 2007. That recovery capsule mission director is also a lady, led by a lady. This is our spacecraft control center, where 24/7 we are controlling a satellite. Once a satellite is launched, whether the satellite life is 1 year or 10 years, now one satellite is there from past 18 years. It is led by many ladies are working in round the clock shift. And space debris, now it is really one challenging in the space. This thing is space debris. How in the Earth, in the Bangalore traffic, we are struggling. The same way in the space also, we are now managing how to handle the space debris, the traffic management. We are tracking each and every debris or element in the space which is more than 5 centimeter big, and either it can be a live satellite or a dead satellite, or the part of a satellite, or a part of an asteroid, or a part of a launch vehicle upper stage. All those things will be a debris for us. Whenever it is coming very near to our satellite, that immediately we have to move away from our actual orbit. Then once it is passed, again we have to bring it back, like our vehicle driving only. So that division associate director is also a lady. She's doing really wonders. Now we are making a patch antenna to track all the space elements in a different technology we are coming up. So we are having more than 24% of women employees. But that 24% of women contribution is enormous. Once our ex-chairman, he was giving the statistics, then he has told us the women employees contribution is 24% of women employees contribution is 80% compared to the men contribution. This is the award we got, or the reward we got from the chairman, and the success. What we can tell, what I just want to tell is, earlier, yes, women were there only for in the kitchen and other household activity, but in the nowadays the people are in the women are there in all the areas. It either it can be science or a technology, or it can be a defense, or it can be sports. Everywhere the women are coming up very nicely. Only thing is we need that support so that we can do wonders, is what it shows here. In this Isro achievement, whatever it is displaying here, nearly 13 student satellites and 83 launch vehicle, the launch vehicle project directors, and out of this 107 Indian satellites what we have launched, many of them are handled by women scientists. This is where the Isro stands for the women supporting empowerment of the woman, not only in Isro, but it is not that easy. Yes, I agree, because everything, all the design. Even if you take an astronaut space suit was designed for men. But when first time Valentina Tereshkova was selected for the first woman as an astronaut, the whole space suit itself, the design itself was not there. So it starts from there. Now the thinking for any sector, the design for the woman also should be there. The thinking is nowadays it is coming. Now also many female astronauts are not qualifying because of their personality. That small space suit is not there is one reason some people have rejected. That is really I don't know, I should not tell that. The improvement should happen in that field also, and in the definitely in the ISS, International Space Stations, the women are going more than 72 women went all out of around 570 580 total astronauts. In that more than 72 people went, women went, and they have done a spacewalk. They have done really wonders in the ISS. You know about Sunita Williams and Kalpana Chawla, and these are all the women. The photo what you are seeing, all are female astronauts who has gone successfully to the space flight. There is analysis, skill analysis. See, in the age of up to 7 years, 8 years, if you see, girl performance is better than a boy is what the gender one analysis they have done. In that the result shows in the childhood really girl will do better than a boy, but later after some period, because of the environment will make their performance suppress their ability, and boys will take over in some field like engineering and mathematics. Chemistry still women are leading, and medical women are leading is just I wanted to tell. This is how thank you for. I just wanted to show one satellite. 1 second. 1 second. Yeah, see, this is a mom satellite. In this mom satellite, you can see one side is a solar panel, and this is the antenna. If you see other satellite antenna will be, you cannot make out where it is. This is a huge high gain antenna. This high gain antenna design is really a challenging task. The whole satellite will be folded and kept in this rocket nose. The rocket nose, it will be there. This is 1:100 rocket where it has taken the mom PSLV satellite to the Mars orbit. And when it is after the separation, within 80 seconds, this has to be deployed automatically. So the first automation was there for the very few sensors only. But the mom made the satellite more robust, more autonomous, what I can tell. So that autonomy division was headed by a lady. Why autonomy is required? It is a compulsory for the mom mission is when all the communication will happen in the speed of light. When the earthbound satellite, in the fraction of a second we can communicate, but for the mom mission, when it is away nearly 400 million kilometer, one way communication will be 22 minutes, and whatever the command will send, if we need a response for that, we had to wait another 22 minutes. So nearly 44 minutes where we can see actually the physics there, we can experience that. So for that faint signal to receive and to transmit, the RF signal is very much important, and that we cannot do real-time corrections or real-time any commanding. So onboard autonomy is a must. If any hiccup in the satellite or anything, automatically it should take care, it should come to a normal, and that signal should come to us. So the autonomy is very much important, is what I just wanted to tell. So this is where the Isro is supporting women employees. And the only the thing is, see, if you are capable, what I want to tell everybody is, your concentration or dedication is important than gender discrimination. If the capability is there and you are able to concentrate and come, definitely we will come up, is what I just want to tell. Okay, thank you. Any questions are there, you can ask. Otherwise, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. As we are running shortage of time, if there are any question, we'll send it by mail, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So we'll move to the next speaker. We have our next speaker, Dr. Young Sampurna. Dr. Young Sampurna is an associate professor in Indian Institute of Astrophysics, Bengaluru. She was a postdoctoral fellow at the Instituto de Astrofísica of Spain, and she is one of the few recipients of the prestigious Chandrasekhar Postdoctoral Research Fellowship. With this, she has more than 48 international publications and 31 papers in conferences. With this, I request Sampurna Madam to take over this session.
Thank you, Priyanka, for your kind introduction. I will share my presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. So a very good afternoon to all of you. I'd like to thank Karnataka State Council for inviting me as a guest speaker for the Vigyan Utsav theme, Women Scientist. It is my pleasure to share with you my experiences as a women scientist, in particular the joy and excitement of doing research in astrophysics. I hope that I would be able to motivate some of the young student participants to pursue pure science and astrophysics as a lifelong career. I work with the Indian Institute of Astrophysics as a theoretician. IIA is India's premier institute devoted to research in all branches of astronomy and astrophysics. IIA has nurtured a sizable number of accomplished women scientists all around the world. In fact, a considerable portion of faculty and students at IIA are women. And this esteemed institute also happens to be my alma mater. There have been several women astronomers who have made fundamental contributions to astronomy and astrophysics. To name a few, Annie Jump Cannon, an American astronomer who was responsible for spectral classification of stars; Jocelyn Bell, an Irish astronomer who discovered pulsars; Andrea Ghez, an American astronomer who received the Nobel Prize recently in Physics 2020, together with Roger Penrose and Reinhard Genzel for their discoveries related to black holes. Let me first tell you what motivated me towards astrophysics research. Since high school, my interest...
Are you your slides?
No, I'm not yet changing.
Okay.
I will change.
Okay, sorry, ma'am.
Yeah. Since high school, my interests were on science, and my teachers from high school onwards nurtured my interest and channeled my efforts to pursue a career in pure science. In particular, an interesting chapter on astrophysics during my bachelor's motivated me to pursue further studies in this subject. My physics teachers and professors advised me about the wide scope of research in astronomy and astrophysics, and thoroughly motivated me to pursue a research career. Indeed, there have been and there will be multiple interesting problems in astronomy and astrophysics that are yet to be conceived and solved. I shall, from here onwards, I shall focus on giving you a flavor of the kind of research interests that I pursue. So, as many of you know, astronomy and astrophysics concerns the study of celestial objects. Here we basically apply the laws of physics to understand them. The picture to the right shows an image of the sky, which showing a numerous number of stars, and in between the stars you can also see the clouds of gas and dust where stars take birth. We know a great deal of information about them simply by studying the radiation emitted by these objects. Indeed, radiation is the astronomer's treasure. The electromagnetic spectrum that we use spans about 15 decades in frequency, all the way from radio, visible, X-rays to gamma rays. So the question to ask is, how do we measure the radiation? So the radiation is measured with the help of an instrument called telescope. Telescope is a light collecting instrument to which is attached the detectors such as spectrographs that measure the radiation. To give you some example, I here show you the observatories of IAA. To the north, we have the Indian Astronomical Observatory located at Henley, Ladakh for optical and infrared astronomy. The picture here shows the 2-meter Himalayan Chandra telescope at this observatory. To the south, we have Kodaikanal Solar Observatory for solar observations, and Vainabappu Observatory for optical astronomy, Gauribidanur Radio Observatory for radio astronomy. IAA is the major contributor to the ultraviolet imaging telescope on board AstroSat, which is India's first multi-wavelength space observatory launched by Isro in September 2015. So now that we know how to detect the radiation, we ask how energy is produced in stars. The energy is produced at the center of the star through nuclear fusion reactions, wherein the 4 hydrogen nuclei fuse to give a helium nuclei, and this being an exothermic process, energy is produced as gamma rays. So the energy so produced at the center of the star has to reach the surface, and this takes about 1 million of years. This is because the interior of the star is highly dense. The interior of the star has 3 main regions. In the core, the energy is transported in the form of conduction, and in the radiation zone, the energy is transported in the form of radiation, and in the convection zone, in the form of mass motion. In this process, the gamma ray gets degraded, and we get photons of all wavelength reaching the surface of the sun. I have taken the example of sun here for this illustration. The sun, after the interior, we have the solar atmosphere, which comprises of the chromosphere and the higher layers. The photosphere is the visible layer of the sun, from where we receive the radiation from the sun. So when sunlight is dispersed by an ordinary prism, what is a continuum spectrum, basically the width IR. If we do a more careful examination using a high resolution spectrograph, then we see that this spectrum is interrupted by a large number of dark absorption lines like it is shown here. So what is shown is intensity as a function of width, covering from red to the blue, and you can see the numerous number of dark absorption lines in the spectrum. So how this spectrum is formed? To understand that, we have to understand the solar atmosphere, because it is the region of the sun where the radiation undergoes the final and the most important change. A quantitative study of the passage of radiation through the solar atmosphere is called the theory of formation of spectral lines. So what is a spectral line? Spectral line at the atomic physics level is nothing but when an atom makes a transition from an high, say, energy level E2 to energy level, then it emits a photon with frequency nu naught, which corresponds to the energy difference between the two levels. This spectral line is not sharp like I have shown here. It is actually, it has some spread about the central frequency, and that is called a spectral line broadening. There are many processes by which a spectral line is broadened. The most important one is the natural, and this occurs because an excited level, like the upper level of an atom, is an excited, and so it has a finite lifetime. And therefore, by Heisenberg's principle, a finite leads to a finite spread in energy, and as a result, the spectral line also has a finite spread about its central frequency. Now let me explain how this absorption line is formed first in the lab, then in the case of sun. So let us consider an experiment. Let us take a hot bulb and pass the radiation through a slit and a prism, and on the screen we will get the continuous spectrum. Now let us place a cool low density gas in between the slit and the hot bulb. Then we see that some of the wavelengths are removed and we see dark lines on the screen. This is how we get absorption lines in the lab. Now what about the sun? The role of the hot bulb is played by the base of the photosphere, which emits a continuous spectrum. And the layers above it, namely the photosphere and chromosphere, represent the thin cooler gas, and which removes the wavelength from the continuous spectrum to give the absorption spectrum of the sun. So why it is so important to study these spectral lines? The spectral lines are very specific to a given element, and no two element can emit spectral lines exactly at the same wavelengths. Therefore, spectral lines are fingerprints of the element that produces them. So the moment we know that a particular spectral line is present in the solar spectrum, we can say that this particular element is present in the solar atmosphere. And if we do a quantitative analysis, we can also say what is the gas pressure, the temperature, and the density at different heights within the solar atmosphere. So all this we can infer simply by studying the intensity spectrum. However, the radiation that we receive from astronomical objects is more often polarized, and even more subtle information is encoded in this polarized light. Light gets polarized due to scattering or by the presence of an external magnetic field. So in the case of a sun, consider in the solar atmosphere. This is illuminated by radiation from all directions. However, the radiation, the intensity of radiation falling on it from different directions are different. So as a result, the scattering of such an incident radiation gives rise to linearly polarized light. So the linearly polarized spectrum of the sun is called as the second solar spectrum. The picture here shows an observation of the second spectrum. The top panel is the spectrum, intensity versus wavelength, where you can see the a numerous number of absorption lines. The bottom panel shows the linear polarization spectrum, and you can see that it has a completely different appearance compared to the intensity spectrum, and that is why it is called as the second solar spectrum. And this spectrum gives us a wealth of information on the effects of light scattering on atoms and molecules. This second solar spectrum gets modified in the presence of a weak magnetic field through an effect called as Henley Effect. This effect is named after the physicist Henley, who discovered this and also physical interpretation as a part of his PhD thesis in Göttingen University. He was basically doing light scattering experiments, and he noticed that when a weak magnetic field is applied, then the scattered non-magnetic polarization is modified, and basically he noticed a depolarization, and also the plane of polarization was rotated. To explain this effect, he had to invoke the quantum superposition of pure states in quantum mechanics. In fact, his experiment is a support for the existence of such states in quantum mechanics. So for that, to understand that, let us just consider a simple two-level atom with the ground level with total angular momentum 0 and the upper level with total angular momentum 1. So we have to remember the upper level is naturally broadened, which is denoted by this quantity. So when a magnetic field is applied, this upper level splits into magnetic substates, and the magnetic splitting is quantified by this quantity. So when the magnetic splitting and the natural width are comparable, the magnetic substates exist in a superposed state. And the transition from such a state gives rise to Henley effect. Physicists use this Henley effect to find the radiative width of the upper levels. Whereas solar physicists make use of this Henley effect to diagnose the weak fields on the sun. Weak fields on the order of a few tens to hundreds of Gauss. However, sun has a whole range of fields. It has very strong fields also, such as kilogauss fields. So how do we find kilogauss fields on the sun? And that is through the use of Zeeman effect. Many of you may have heard about Zeeman effect, where here the magnetic splitting is so large, it is much greater than the natural width of the level, so that the magnetic substates are well separated. And therefore, the spectral line splits into three with the pi and the sigma components, and they exhibit both linear and circular polarization. For more than a century, solar physicists have been using the fingerprints of the Zeeman effect to measure the magnetic fields on the sun. So here I show a typical signature of Zeeman effect on the sun. The top panel shows the intensity. The panel below it shows the linear polarization, and the third panel shows the plane of polarization, and the bottommost panel is the circular polarization. And this is a typical signature of Zeeman effect in iron line. Here I show the signatures of on the sun. So let me take the example of calcium 1 line at 4227 angstrom. So when this line is observed in a non-magnetic region, then we to the left you can see that the intensity spectrum and the is the linear polarization. It shows a peak polarization of 2% in the absence of magnetic field. When this line is observed in a weak magnetic field region on the sun, then to the right you can see that the rightmost panel, the central peak is reduced to less than 1%, and the plane of polarization is also rotated. So the Henley and Zeeman effects that we know from our laboratory physics are indeed seen on the sun. So it is our task to invert these observations and obtain what kind of magnetic fields exist on the sun. And that for that we need to develop theoretical models. So this involves basically first finding the quantum and classical theory of scattering on atoms and molecules. And once the scattering theory is developed, we need to incorporate that into the line formation problem, because we are talking about the solar atmosphere, and we have to understand how the solar radiation, the polarized light, traverses through the solar atmosphere before reaching us. That is the polarized line formation problem, and that needs to be simulated in a computer. So we have to develop numerical techniques to do this. So once this theoretical model is ready, we can apply it to interpret the observed polarized spectrum. So this is kind of a flavor of the field in which I work. So basically, I have been developing scattering theories for which covers arbitrary fields from say 10 Gauss to kilogauss, covering all the Henley, the intermediate Henley-Zeeman, and the regime. And we have developed this for more and more complex atomic systems. And then we have also considered the line formation problem for the solar case and developed the numerical techniques, etc. And I have also been involved in interpreting some of the observed polarized spectrum of some of the selected spectral lines. So I just wanted to give a flavor of the kind of research work I do, so that it may be of it could be of some motivation to younger audience of this meeting. So I thank you for your attention. So I stop here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. It was great to have you with us today. So thank you, ma'am. So if there are any questions, we'll send it to your mail, ma'am, so that you can respond it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So in this webinar, we are at the end. So we have the last speaker, that's Miss Kshama V. Bhanuprakash. Kshama V. Bhanuprakash is a well-known science columnist in Kannada daily newspaper. She has published more than 300 science articles, and she has engaged herself in writing scripts for All India Radio for science-based radio serials. And she has also authored 3 science books in Kannada. And she's a very active science columnist and science communicator. So with this, I request Kshama Madam to take over the session. So over to you, Kshama Madam.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. Good afternoon, all of you. And firstly, I would like to thank KSCST for this humbling opportunity. Actually, I'm a science educator and a science communicator, and I will probably play an important role in creating scientists like all the great scientists that we have with us today, all ma'ams who spoke before me, and also in communicating all the research that you do to common people like me. So that's my job, and I would like to talk about that, women and science, as well as a role of a science communicator and why science communication should probably happen in regional language as well. Okay, so I would like to present my screen. Just a second. Since we are running late, I would keep it short. Yeah, the screen is visible, right? Yeah, it is. So firstly, before we go ahead with the topic, I want to talk about why science today. Is my presentation visible to everyone?
Yeah, it's visible, ma'am, but it's not moving. I think it's not full screen.
It's not full screen. I just moved to the next slide, but
I think it's not going to the sign presentation mode.
Okay, ma'am, just a second, please. I have gone to the slide.
But while seeing it's in the same home page.
Okay, just a second, ma'am. Please give me a minute. Now I think we have gone to the next slide here. It's visible, right? So why science? Is it visible, ma'am, Priyanka?
No, actually it's why science is visible along with the science, along with other slides as well.
Okay.
So I think you can go with the non-slide show.
Now is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay, ma'am. You can start from this slide.
Okay, thank you. So firstly, why science? All of the great scientists that spoke about different fields and their experiences before have spoken about science in detail, I'm sure. But probably my talk today would be like a summary of what all you have done. And I'll keep it short as promised. So firstly, why science? Because science is very integral part of all our life. And children, the moment they are born with curiosity. And through that only they learn everything. And that's the basic of science for that matter. So young children, they always play like scientists. They try to investigate things. They are curious all the time. And they are skeptical about things. They're not very sure of, okay, this is how it is. No, they are ready to accept it another way as well. So being skeptical about things or being open-minded towards everything and being creative. We are born with all of this. But eventually, in the process of education, we tend to lose few of these. But we should ensure we are in the path of right education so that we develop and retain this scientific attitude throughout our life. Because it's very important in everyday life that we look at things with a scientific attitude. And as a teacher or as parents or as students, you all have to ensure that we retain it within ourselves and spread this awareness or scientific attitude in people whom we interact with. Yeah, so this, I hope I've got to the next slide. Just a second. Yeah, I have. So why women? So today the topic is all about women in science. So we spoke about why science. Now why women? But the answer is why not? Yeah, we are capable of doing everything just like anyone else. So, and we have proven it to the world time and again, and everyone for sure knows that women can multitask and women can do everything. Why not science? Science, especially, as you know, since it's a part of our daily life, women are playing multiple roles. As a mother, as a, yesterday was Women's Day, so you all would have read the messages and you all interact with other women in life, and we are all women ourselves. So we know we can do everything. And it was told to a lot of people that not in this era, probably before, that women can't do science because it's for people who are brainy, who are brilliant. Women are not, is what was told. But women scientists, a lot of women scientists proved it to the world that just like anyone else, we can as well. Okay, and that's exactly, okay, just a second. That's exactly why we have all of these people. Sorry, there is some issue with some technical issue here. So all these great scientists who have proven their worth through their work, through their research, and not because they are women. They have got, and all these 11 scientists that you see on my left-hand side, all of them, there are 11 chairs established since last year in their names, and there is a lot of encouragement given to women, given to child who wants to pursue science further, and also various other scientists that you see here, and all the women scientists who have spoken till now, the professors and scientists who have spoken till now, have proven to the world that we can do science, technology, research, anything related to this way better than anyone who's done it before, regardless of the gender. And they are inspiring us every single day, inspiring every single child around that, yes, it is possible and we can go ahead. We can do what we want, be it science, be it anything that we are talking about. Now, we have to start early, but we have to tell people that, yes, it is possible for girl children to do sciences. And women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, they've been proving it, but not everyone is aware we can say there is a gap in communication, and there is still gender bias, though we like it or not to accept, there is still gender bias in the society, in schools, in family as well. Though the percentage might have reduced, there is gender bias, and we all together have to work, against it to ensure everyone, every girl, every woman who's capable to get into science and pursue a career, pursue research as per their aspirations. So there is also International Day of Women and Girls in Science that was celebrated on 11th February. And a lot of work has been done after that as well with respect to women in the field of science. And as a teacher, as an educator, I would definitely want to tell all of you that we have to start early, because role models for boy children is always scientists and doctors and researchers, but then for women it's always the princesses that we talk about, not superheroes. It is changing nowadays, yes, but then we still have to normalize it even more, because as you know, if a lie is repeated 100 times, people believe that it's a truth, right? But when a truth itself, right, it is true that we all are capable of pursuing anything, any career, any research, anything that male or men are capable of. So when it is a fact, the fact must be repeated even more. It is to be normalized even more, so that everyone is aware of and everyone accepts it. So girls' enthusiasm for STEM, we can of course support through all these. We can facilitate projects at home. We can ensure they are educational field trips, or we have to in fact arrange webinars like this, also bring in female scientists, like women scientists like all of you, and ensure there's an interaction between you and children so that they get inspired by all of you. There are way more various other possibilities, also various other ways that we can do this, but all we should know is, as a parent, really capable of, like other boys, or even better than them. That's subjective, I know, not everyone might accept, but all of us are capable of doing everything that we want to. And science definitely need women. And I've written a book regarding women scientists, and that's when I was researching about few of them. And a lot of scientists, a lot of women scientists have felt that they haven't been given equal importance. And it could be directly or indirectly, or if there is an award given to them, then people say that it is because you're a woman, you're chosen. No, they are scientists. They're not women scientists or men scientists. They are architects, not women or men. They are engineers, not women engineer or a men engineer. It's not that. It's all about their capability. It's all about what they are as a person. Gender should never be in the discussion at all, is what we will have to talk about. So we have few quotes here from a famous tech geek, she calls herself, and also a famous architect. They don't want to be called as a woman architect, woman scientist. No, it's all about their capabilities. That's what we should remember. And we can ensure this is possible only when it is communicated to people. Okay, not just how gender has to be, how we shouldn't be biased towards a particular gender, or how everyone can take up science. Not just that, even communicating what is happening in the science community. Not every layman is aware of what is happening in the scientific community unless communicated in the right way. Because as you can see, this picture, I think, explains everything, because scientists have their own set of terminologies and complicated knowledge, probably, if you can call it so, but then not everyone understands it at the same level. So you will have to reach the public at their level, and then make sure science is communicated the right way. And why science is to be communicated? Because science isn't finished until it's communicated rightly. It is very important for everyone to know what is happening, what research is the scientific community up to. So, and I'm sure it's going to help in everyday life. So we should definitely, science communication is very important hence. And this science communication further, how do we do it? We can do it as a society, we can do it as a scientist, you can do it as well as a science journalist, as a teacher, as a parent. We will have to ensure this reaches everyone around. And it can be done through every media, visual, audio, or as well as writing, journalism, where you will, of course, through books and journals. Now, scientific communication is said to be of a good quality only when it is factual, when it's clear, when it's coherent and contextual, it is when it is purposeful, and when it is targeting the right audience in the right way, and when it is impactful, also when it is balanced, not biased towards one side or the other. It shouldn't be one-sided anytime, and it should be transparent. It should be spellbinding so that people are in fact absorbed into it. People like the way it is presented. If it's only the terminologies and hard keywords, then no one would like to read it. If you want it to reach public, if you want to reach a layman, then you will definitely have to make it simpler, yet the facts shouldn't be lost anywhere. Also, it should be relatable to people so that they pick it up and read, or they hear it out, or they watch it. Also, it should be responsible. So these are 12 quality indicators of an effective scientific communication. And this science communication should happen in regional language or in mother tongue as well. Now, since I would have definitely spoken about all this only in the regional language, but I know there are people from everywhere, so we will have to take it forward in English. But here we have a scientist, our Nobel laureate, C.V. Raman, who insisted that science, or anything for that matter, has to be taught, has to be conveyed through regional language or mother tongue. And I am very glad and happy that I am communicating science through regional language, through my mother tongue, through Kannada. I have written about few hundreds of articles in all the leading newspapers and leading Kannada magazines, science magazines and journals. And also I've written scripts for radio serials, which are again related to science. That's when I feel I'm acting as a bridge between science research community as well as laymen. And this book, which I just put this up here because this was my recent book, which is related to 50 women scientists. And when I learned about them and when I wrote about them is when I felt very proud of being a woman. Also, it was very difficult to see and learn about what all they have gone through. But in spite of that, it is so inspiring that they have attained the purpose that they plan to, and it's all because of that grit they have within them. So how much ever the world says you are not worth it, how much ever the world says you shouldn't be for science, you are a woman, you shouldn't take it up, please prove them wrong by doing what you are supposed to and what you are capable of. And having said that, is there equality, is there balance between women scientists and men scientists? Is there equality between girls and boys in terms of education or in terms of scientific organizations and institutions? Statistics say no. If you look at Nobel Prize laureates, for example, you see a great difference, 97% of men and 3% of women. But Nobel Prize is not, it's not mandatory. It's not something that will tell you whether a scientist is worth it, a scientist is a great scientist or not. Of course, yes. Nobel Prize is not the only one. It's just one of the awards, one of the very prestigious awards. Okay, but that's just considered here as an example. But we also look at the other statistics, which also suggest the same thing in leadership positions in scientific and technology industries. You have only 5% of women and 95% of men. Now, women in STEM, they themselves have answered a few questions and they have come up that they have all these issues when they face it in everyday life. Okay, lower income or gender prejudice or challenges in everyday life because of their biology. Yes, we have to accept that biologically, the question paper that the nature has given us, women, is slightly different than what it is given men, right? So we have to deal with menstrual periods, for example, or pregnancy or delivery of the child, and then later nutritional requirements of the child, everything. Yes, and it's not just a challenge. Of course, it's a pleasure. I'll have to admit that. But it is a challenge. Slightly, we will have to look at things in a different way. We can't work in a scientific laboratory throughout the day, throughout the night, like our male subordinates or our colleagues work, right? And yes, people have overcome all those. People have figured out ways to, come across possibilities to overcome these challenges. But then it's not easy for everyone. There has to be support from family. There has to be support from society. But even without the support, women have proved that they can do it with the grit that they have within themselves. And we should support and celebrate all such people so that more such girls and women, enter these fields and win laurels. But having said that, there is hope. There is hope because statistics also confirm, though there is slow increase, there is a steady increase in number of girls who are getting educated beyond graduation. Girls who are taking part in regional, national, and international science programs and championships. Also, there is increase in number of women who are pursuing pure or applied science research as well as professions. And women are honored with laurels and recognition, not because they are women, because of all that they have achieved. Now, this, you can see the statistics here in the pie chart as well, and that is reassuring that we are all heading towards the heading in the right direction. So we have a lot of women scientists and a lot more coming up. I'm just hoping and working as a parent, as a science educator, as a science communicator towards making this possible sooner. Having said that, I would like to thank you all for listening out and for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. One second, I think something. Okay, it was a message from Rashika. Okay, thank you, ma'am. It was nice. As usual, you just communicated the whole contribution of women to the STEM. So thank you, ma'am, for being with us. So with this, we'll come to end of this webinar of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav Vigyan. So we request our colleague, Mrs. Anjali, project engineer of KSCST, to give a vote of thanks for all the gathering here. And meanwhile, the link for the certificate will be posted in the chat box. Kindly fill your attendance or mark your attendance through the form. Only those who have filled the form will be receiving the certificate for participating in this webinar. So over to you, Anjali.
Thank you, Priyanka. It's my pleasure to deliver a vote of thanks on this occasion. I would like to thank Professor Savitri HS for sharing her journey as a scientist and motivating us with her journey. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to also thank Professor Pratima Murthy for motivating young minds through the speech to take up themselves into a science and management career by balancing the commitment. Thank you, ma'am. Special thank to Dr. Rupa Yami for showing the women contribution in Isro and also encouraging us by showing all those presentations. Thanks to Dr. Young Sampurna for sharing her experience in astrophysics and motivating us. I would also like to thank Mrs. Shama V. Bhanuprakash for encouraging young minds to take up science as a career as well as a research area. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank all the participants for showing the interest in take part in the program and making it as a success. I request everyone to fill the form for the certificate. Those who are filling the certificate, they will be receiving a e-certificate shortly. Finally, I would like to thank our KSCST Secretary, Executive Secretary, and all the staffs who contributed directly and indirectly for the success of the program. Thank you, everyone. Also, I request everyone to join our next Vigyan Utsav program, which is in the next month, April, with the theme Science and Society. The link for the registration will be shortly sent to those who are filling the details in the certificate link. I request everyone to join in our next month theme as well. Thank you, everyone.